The buckboard appeared at dawn like a deliberate act of war, blocking the main gate to the Double Diamond Ranch with its wheels dug into the dirt, and a woman sitting ramrod straight on the driver's bench with a Winchester rifle across her lap. Wade Donovan had been riding since midnight, bringing in strays from the northern pasture, and he pulled his horse up short when he saw the obstruction, dust settling around him in the pale morning light. The woman wore a simple blue calico dress that had seen better days, her honey-colored hair pulled back in a braid that hung down her back, and even from 30 feet away he could see the determination carved into her features like stone. "Gates blocked," his ranch hand Miguel called out unnecessarily, pulling up beside him with a confused expression. Wade raised his hand for silence, his eyes never leaving the woman. Something about her posture spoke of desperation held in check by sheer willpower, and he had learned in his 32 years that desperate people were unpredictable. The Winchester was old but well-maintained, and her finger rested near the trigger guard with the casual familiarity of someone who knew how to use it. "Madam," he called out, keeping his voice level and unthreatening, "that's my gate you're blocking." "I know whose gate it is," she called back, her voice clear and strong despite the slight tremor he detected underneath. "I need to talk to Wade Donovan. You're talking to him." She stiffened slightly, her knuckles whitening on the rifle. "Then you're the man who killed my brother." The words hung in the air between them like gunsmoke, and Wade felt his stomach drop. He knew exactly which brother she meant, though he had hoped that particular ghost would stay buried. 3 months ago, a man named Thomas Lawson had tried to rustle cattle from the Double Diamond during a moonless night, and when Wade and his men had confronted him, the rustler had drawn first. Wade had been faster. It was self-defense, clear and simple, but that did not mean it sat easy on his conscience. "Your brother drew on me," Wade said quietly. "Sheriff Thompson ruled it self-defense." "My brother was desperate," she shot back, her voice breaking slightly. "He was trying to save our ranch. Our father died 6 months ago, and the bank is threatening foreclosure. Thomas thought if he could just get a few cattle, sell them quickly, he could make the payment. It was stupid and wrong, but he did not deserve to die for it." Wade sat still in his saddle, feeling the weight of her words settle over him like a heavy coat. Behind him, Miguel and the other hands waited for instructions, but he raised his hand again to keep them back. The sun was climbing higher now, painting the Montana sky in shades of pink and gold, and Fort Benton was waking up in the distance, smoke rising from breakfast fires. "What's your name, madam?" he asked. "Beatrice Lawson." "Miss Lawson, I'm sorry about your brother, truly. But blocking my gate and pointing a rifle at me is not going to bring him back or save your ranch." "I know that," she said, and he saw her jaw tighten. "But I had to do something. You took my brother from me. The least you can do is hear me out. I'm listening. Not like this. Not with you up there on your horse surrounded by your men and me down here like some kind of criminal. I want to talk to you properly. Face to face, just you and me." Wade considered this. The woman was clearly at the end of her rope, and desperate people made poor decisions. But there was something in her eyes beyond desperation, a fierce intelligence and pride that he recognized and respected. He had built the Double Diamond from nothing through hard work and determination, and he knew what it looked like when someone was fighting for everything they held dear. "All right," he said slowly. "I'll hear you out, but you need to move that buckboard and put down the rifle." "No." The simple refusal caught him off guard. "No, no, I move the buckboard and you'll just ride in and forget about me. I put down the rifle and I lose the only thing keeping you honest. I stay right here until you agree to sit down and talk to me properly." Miguel leaned over in his saddle. "Boss, we got work to do. Want me to get the sheriff?" Wade shook his head slowly, his eyes still locked on Beatrice Lawson's determined face. There was something almost admirable in her stubbornness, even if it was monumentally foolish. "No. If Miss Lawson wants to sit in the sun blocking my gate, that's her choice. Come on, boys. We'll go around through the eastern pasture." He saw surprise flicker across her face as he turned his horse away, and he almost smiled despite the situation. Let her think about what she was doing. Let her sit there in the Montana heat and reconsider her approach. By noon she would be ready to negotiate like a reasonable person. Except noon came and went, and Beatrice Lawson did not move from her buckboard. Wade watched from the ranch house window as she sat there under the blazing sun, her rifle still across her lap, her back still straight. She had produced a parasol at some point, the faded fabric providing minimal shade, but she showed no signs of giving up. The buckboard's 2 horses stood patiently in their traces, occasionally shifting their weight but otherwise unbothered by the weight. "She's still there," Miguel said, coming into the house with his hat in his hands. "Do you want me to take some water out to her horses at least?" Wade nodded. "Yeah. Animals should not suffer for human stubbornness." He paused. "Take a canteen for her too, but do not get within rifle range. Just set it down where she can get it." Miguel grinned. "Worried about her. Worried about the paperwork if she dies of heatstroke on my property," Wade said dryly, but they both knew that was not quite true. There was something about Beatrice Lawson that had gotten under his skin, some quality he could not quite name. Perhaps it was the sheer audacity of her actions, or perhaps it was the guilt he carried over Thomas Lawson's death. Either way, he found himself checking the window more often than necessary as the afternoon wore on. By evening, she was still there. Wade had Miguel light lanterns near the gate so she would not be in complete darkness, and he watched from the porch as the stars came out over Montana. The temperature dropped rapidly as it always did on summer nights in the high country, and he could see her pulling a shawl around her shoulders. She had moved the buckboard slightly to let his horses and cattle use the gate, but she had positioned herself directly in front of the main entrance, making it clear she was not leaving. "This is crazy," Wade muttered to himself, but there was a hint of respect in his voice. The second day dawned clear and hot, and Beatrice Lawson was still at her post. Wade had not slept well, plagued by dreams of Thomas Lawson's face in the moment before he drew his gun, and he came out to the porch before sunrise to find her already awake, watching the horizon with tired eyes. Her dress was wrinkled now, and her braid had come slightly loose, but her grip on the Winchester was still firm. "Morning, Miss Lawson," he called out. She turned to look at him across the distance, and even though he could not see her expression clearly in the pre-dawn light, he felt the weight of her gaze. "Morning, Mr. Donovan. Ready to talk yet? You're being unreasonable. I'm being determined. There's a difference." Wade felt frustration rise in his chest, but also something else he could not quite identify. "What exactly do you want from me? I cannot bring your brother back. I cannot change what happened." "I want you to help me save the ranch," she called back, her voice carrying clearly in the still morning air. "Thomas died because he was trying to save it. The least you can do is finish what he started. You want me to give you money. I want you to loan me money. There's a difference. I'll pay back every cent with interest. Banks exist for that purpose, Miss Lawson. The bank already turned me down. No one will loan money to a woman alone with a failing ranch. But you could. You have the resources, and you owe me." Wade felt his jaw tighten. "I do not owe you anything. Your brother tried to steal from me. You owe me because you took away the only family I had left," she shot back, and now there was raw pain in her voice that cut through his defenses. "You owe me because I'm 23 years old and completely alone in the world, and all I'm asking is for a chance to keep my home. "Is that really so unreasonable?" He did not answer, turning instead to go back into the house. But her words followed him, echoing in his mind as he tried to focus on the day's work. The Double Diamond was a large operation, requiring constant attention and management, but he found his thoughts drifting repeatedly to the woman at his gate, 23 years old and alone. The same age he had been when he started building this ranch from nothing but sweat and determination. By midday, people from Fort Benton had started to notice the situation. A wagon passing by stopped to talk to Beatrice, and Wade saw her shake her head firmly at whatever they offered. The sheriff rode out in the afternoon, a portly man named Henderson who had been keeping the peace in Fort Benton for 15 years. "Wade," Sheriff Henderson called from the gate, "you want me to remove this young lady from your property?" Wade walked out to meet him, aware of Beatrice's eyes on him. Up close, he could see the toll 2 days in the sun was taking on her. Her face was flushed despite the parasol, and there were dark circles under her eyes, but her jaw was set in stubborn determination. "What do you think, Sheriff?" Wade asked. "Is she breaking any laws?" Henderson scratched his chin. "Well, she's trespassing on private property, technically, and she's got a rifle, though she has not pointed it at anyone or made any direct threats. I could arrest her if you want to press charges." Wade looked at Beatrice, who met his gaze steadily. There was a moment of silent communication between them, something unspoken passing in the space of a heartbeat. Then he shook his head. "No charges. Miss Lawson is welcome to sit there as long as she likes." "Wade, this is ridiculous," Henderson said. "She cannot just camp out at your gate indefinitely." "Why not? It is my gate. If I say she can sit there, she can sit there." The sheriff looked between them with a bewildered expression, then shrugged. "Your funeral. But when she collapses from exhaustion, do not say I did not warn you." He tipped his hat to Beatrice. "Miss Lawson, you're being foolish." "Probably," she agreed, "but I've got nothing left to lose, Sheriff." Henderson rode away shaking his head, and Wade found himself alone with Beatrice again, separated by 30 feet of dusty ground. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and he saw her sway slightly in her seat before she caught herself. "You're going to make yourself sick," he said. "Then talk to me. I'm talking to you right now. You know what I mean. Come down here. Sit with me. Listen to what I have to say without your ranch and your men and your power surrounding you, just you and me having a conversation." Wade felt something shift in his chest, some internal wall beginning to crack. "And if I do, you'll move the buckboard. I'll listen to what you have to say, and you'll listen to what I have to say, and then we'll figure out what comes next. Together." The word "together" hung in the air, and Wade realized with sudden clarity that this was not just about the ranch or the money or even Thomas Lawson's death. This was about a woman who had lost everything, demanding to be seen, to be heard, to be treated as an equal rather than a problem to be solved or ignored. And somehow, without quite understanding how it had happened, he found himself respecting the hell out of her for it. "All right," he said quietly. "Tomorrow morning, dawn, I'll come down and we'll talk." For the first time since she had appeared at his gate, Beatrice Lawson smiled. It was a small smile, tired and strained but genuine. "Tomorrow morning, dawn, I'll be here." "I know you will," Wade said, and he found himself almost smiling back. That night, Wade sat on his porch long after the hands had gone to bed, watching the distant glow of Beatrice's lantern at the gate. He had brought out a chair and blanket earlier, leaving them at the edge of rifle range, and he had watched as she climbed down from the buckboard to retrieve them. She had looked up toward the house afterward, and even though it was too dark to see clearly, he knew she was looking at him. He had raised his hand in acknowledgement, and she had stood there for a long moment before climbing back onto the buckboard. Miguel came out onto the porch with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Wade before settling into the other chair. "That's quite a woman," he said. "She's stubborn as a mule." "Takes one to know one, boss." Miguel sipped his coffee. "What are you going to tell her tomorrow?" "I do not know yet. You could help her, you know. We had a good year. You've got the capital." Wade turned to look at his foreman, who had been with him since the beginning, helping him build the double diamond from a dream into reality. "You think I should?" "I think Thomas Lawson made a stupid mistake, but his sister should not have to pay for it her whole life. I think she's got more courage sitting at that gate than most men I know would have, and I think you've been looking at her like a man who sees something he did not expect to find." Wade felt heat rise in his face that had nothing to do with the temperature. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Miguel stood, stretching his back. "Get some sleep, boss. You've got a conversation to have at dawn." He paused at the door. "And Wade, do not be an idiot about this. Some things are more important than pride." Alone again, Wade sat in the darkness and thought about Beatrice Lawson sitting at his gate for 2 days straight, refusing to give up or give in. He thought about her brother, desperate and foolish, dying in the dust. He thought about his own parents, dead before he was 20, leaving him alone to make his way in the world. He understood loneliness and loss, and the fierce need to hold onto something that mattered. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, he made his decision. The sun was just beginning to paint the eastern sky when Wade walked down to the gate. He had washed and shaved, put on a clean shirt, and carried with him a basket of food that his cook had prepared. Beatrice was awake, watching him approach with those intelligent eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders now, her dress rumpled from sleeping in it. "Miss Lawson," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "May I come closer?" She hesitated, then set the Winchester down on the buckboard seat beside her. "Please." Wade approached until he was standing next to the buckboard, close enough to see the freckles across her nose and the flecks of green in her hazel eyes. Close enough to see the exhaustion and hope warring in her expression. He set the basket down. "Breakfast," he said simply. "You should eat." "Thank you." Her voice was softer now, less defensive. "I appreciate the chair and blanket last night too." "You're welcome." Wade took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the ranch, about your brother, about all of it. And I want to hear your plan, not the desperate plea version, but the actual business plan. If I'm going to consider lending you money, I need to know that you have a realistic chance of paying it back." Beatrice sat up straighter, wincing slightly from muscles stiff from days of sitting. "The Lawson Ranch is 800 acres, good water, decent grazing land. My father built it up from nothing, and Thomas and I have been running it since he died. We've got about 100 head of cattle, 30 horses. The problem is we've had 2 bad years in a row. First there was the drought, then last winter we lost cattle to disease. We could not make our loan payments and the interest kept piling up. Now we owe the bank $1,500 and we've got 30 days to pay or they foreclose." $1,500, Wade repeated. It was a substantial sum but not insurmountable. "What's your plan to pay it back?" "If I can make the payment, I can keep the ranch. Next spring I can sell the cattle at market. Prices are up. If I have a good calving season and the cattle make it through winter healthy, I should be able to clear $3,000, maybe more. That pays back the loan with interest and gives me working capital. That's optimistic. It's realistic if I can keep the ranch." Wade studied her face, seeing the intelligence and determination there. "What about running the ranch on your own? That's hard work, even with good hands." "I've been running it since my father died. Thomas helped, but I did most of the actual management. I know ranching, Mr. Donovan. I grew up doing it." "I believe you." And he did. There was a competence to her, a practicality that spoke of hard experience. But $1,500 is a lot of money to risk on optimistic cattle prices and a good calving season. Beatrice's face fell slightly, and Wade saw the hope beginning to drain from her eyes. He held up his hand. "I'm not saying no. I'm saying we need to structure this properly. A straight loan at the same interest rate the bank was charging is not going to help you. You'll just be trading one debt for another. What are you proposing? A partnership?" The words came out before he had fully thought them through, but once said, he realized they made sense. "I pay off your bank debt in exchange for a percentage of the ranch profits for the next 3 years. No interest, no fixed payments. If you have a bad year, I take the loss with you. If you have a good year, we both benefit." Beatrice stared at him, her mouth slightly open. "Why would you do that?" "Because I killed your brother," Wade thought. "Because you sat at my gate for 3 days straight. Because there's something about you that makes me want to help you succeed." But he said none of those things. Instead, he said simply, "Because it's good business. Your ranch is sound. You're capable. The risk is acceptable. What percentage are you thinking?" 30%. 20, she countered immediately. 25, and I provide advice and assistance when you need it. Beatrice considered this, her eyes searching his face. "Why are you being kind to me?" "I'm not being kind. I'm being fair. There's a difference." Wade met her gaze steadily. "Your brother made a terrible mistake, Miss Lawson, but you should not lose everything because of it. And honestly, I've been impressed by your determination these past 3 days. Anyone stubborn enough to sit at my gate in the sun for that long deserves a chance to succeed." To his surprise, tears welled up in her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely, but one escaped down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means to me." Wade felt something tighten in his chest at the sight of her tears. "We should draw up proper papers, make it legal and official." "Yes, of course." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I should probably move the buckboard now, probably." But neither of them moved. They stood there in the growing light, the moment stretching between them, charged with something neither could quite name. Finally, Beatrice climbed down from the buckboard, her legs unsteady after 3 days of sitting. She stumbled slightly, and Wade reached out automatically to steady her, his hand closing around her elbow. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him, and from the way her eyes widened, he knew she felt it too. "Thank you," she said again, but this time the words seemed to mean something more than gratitude for financial help. "You're welcome." Wade released her arm reluctantly. "Let me help you move the buckboard." Together they moved the wagon away from the gate, and as they worked side by side, Wade found himself acutely aware of her presence. The way the morning light caught in her hair, the determined set of her jaw, the grace in her movements despite her exhaustion. When the buckboard was clear, she turned to face him and he saw her hesitate. "Mr. Donovan, I need to apologize. The way I approached this was wrong, blocking your gate, threatening you with a rifle. That was not right, no matter how desperate I was." "You got my attention," Wade said with a slight smile. "Sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures. Still, I'm sorry." "Apology accepted, and Miss Lawson, call me Wade," she smiled, and it transformed her tired face into something beautiful. "Then you should call me Beatrice, or B." "Most people call me B." "B," he repeated, liking the way the name felt in his mouth. "Come up to the house. You need rest and a proper meal before we talk business." She shook her head. "I should get back to the ranch. I've been gone 3 days and my hands are probably wondering what happened to me." "Then let me ride with you. Make sure you get home safely." Beatrice looked like she was going to protest, then seemed to reconsider. "All right. That would be kind of you, Wade." The way she said his name sent another jolt through him, and Wade realized with a start that Miguel had been right. There was something happening here, something unexpected and potentially dangerous. He barely knew this woman, and what he did know was that she had blocked his gate and pointed a rifle at him. But there was also courage and intelligence, and a fierce determination to survive that he recognized and admired. He saddled his horse while Beatrice fed and watered her team, and then they set out together toward the Lawson Ranch. The ride took them along the Missouri River, where Fort Benton sat at the convergence of trade routes that had made it one of Montana's most important towns. It was 1883, and the West was still wild enough to be dangerous but civilized enough to have laws and courts and banks. The railroad had reached Montana 2 years earlier, bringing with it new opportunities and new challenges. As they rode, Beatrice told him about her ranch, about growing up as the only daughter of a stubborn Irish immigrant who had believed in hard work and fair dealing, about learning to rope and brand and break horses alongside her brother, about the fear she had felt when her father died suddenly, leaving her and Thomas to manage everything alone. "Thomas was never as good at ranching as I was," she admitted, her voice sad. "He was a dreamer, always looking for the quick solution instead of putting in the work. When things got bad, he started drinking, gambling. That's how we got so far behind on the loan. He lost money we could not afford to lose, and then he tried to make it back through cattle rustling." She shook her head. "I tried to stop him. The night he went out, we argued. I told him it was stupid and wrong, but he would not listen. I'm sorry," Wade said quietly. "If it helps, I did not want to shoot him. He drew first. I had no choice. I know." Beatrice looked over at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "The sheriff told me what happened. I know it was self-defense, but that did not make it hurt any less when they brought his body home." They rode in silence for a while, the only sound the creaking of the buckboard and the steady rhythm of hoofbeats. Finally, Beatrice spoke again. "Why did you really agree to help me, Wade? You could have just had the sheriff remove me from your gate." Wade considered the question carefully. "Because you reminded me of myself. When I was your age, I was alone trying to build something from nothing. If someone had not given me a chance, helped me when I needed it, I would not have the double diamond now. Maybe it's time I paid that forward." "Who helped you?" "An old rancher named Samuel Cobb. He hired me when I had nothing, taught me everything about ranching, and when he died, he left me enough money to buy my first piece of land. Said I had the eye and the heart for it." Wade smiled at the memory. "Best man I ever knew. He would be proud of what you have built." "I hope so." The Lawson Ranch appeared over a rise, and Wade could see immediately that Beatrice had been telling the truth about its potential. The land was good, the house and barns well maintained, despite obvious signs of financial strain. Several ranch hands came out as they approached, relief evident on their faces when they saw Beatrice. "Boss," a young man who looked about 18 hurried forward. "We were about ready to form a search party. Where have you been?" "Fort Benton," Beatrice said, climbing down from the buckboard with visible effort. "Jacob, this is Wade Donovan. Wade, this is Jacob Miller, my foreman." Jacob's expression hardened at the name. "Donovan, the man who killed Thomas." "Jacob, it's all right," Beatrice said quickly. "Mr. Donovan and I have reached an understanding. He's going to help us save the ranch." The young man looked between them with confusion and suspicion. "What kind of understanding?" Wade dismounted and extended his hand. "A business partnership. I'm paying off your bank debt in exchange for a percentage of profits. Miss Lawson retains full ownership and operational control." Jacob looked at Wade's outstretched hand for a long moment before finally shaking it grudgingly. "Thomas was my friend. I know, and I'm sorry for your loss. But Thomas made a choice that night, and we all have to live with the consequences." The tension stretched tight between them before Beatrice stepped forward. "Jacob, Wade is trying to help us. The least we can do is be civil. Now I need to get some sleep. Can you show Mr. Donovan around the property while I rest?" "Boss, you look like death warmed over," Jacob said bluntly. "You should have Doc Patterson look at you." "I'm fine. Just tired. A few hours of sleep and I will be good as new." She turned to Wade. "Thank you for riding with me. And for everything else." "Rest," Wade said gently. "We can talk more about the details in a few days. Right now you need to take care of yourself." Beatrice nodded and walked toward the house, her steps unsteady with exhaustion. Wade watched her go, concerned by how worn out she looked. 3 days in the sun had taken a real toll. Jacob cleared his throat. "She's tough, that one. Tougher than Thomas ever was, if I'm being honest. She seems capable." "She's more than capable. She's the best rancher I've ever worked for, and I've worked for several." Jacob's expression softened slightly. "Thomas was my friend, but he was also a fool. B tried to keep things together, but he kept making it harder. What he did, trying to rustle your cattle, that was all him. B did not know until after." "I figured as much." Wade looked around the ranch yard, noting the details. "The place is in good shape considering your financial troubles. B insisted we maintain everything properly. Said we might be poor, but we did not have to look poor." Pride crept into Jacob's voice. "She's got standards." Wade found himself liking Beatrice Lawson even more. "Show me around." For the next hour, Jacob walked Wade through the Lawson ranch, pointing out the cattle, the horses, the grazing rotation system Beatrice had implemented. It was clear that whoever was running this operation knew what they were doing. The animals were healthy, the fences in good repair, the water management sound. With proper capital and a few good years, the ranch could be very profitable. As they walked, Jacob gradually warmed to Wade, his initial hostility fading. They talked about cattle prices, grazing land, the challenges of ranching in Montana. By the time they returned to the yard, they were not quite friends, but the tension had eased considerably. "I should get back," Wade said, mounting his horse. "Tell Beatrice I will come by in a few days with the legal papers for our partnership." "Mr. Donovan," Jacob called as Wade turned to leave. "Thank you for helping her. She deserves better than what life has given her lately." "I agree," Wade said, and realized he meant it completely. The ride back to the Double Diamond gave Wade time to think about what he had just committed to. A business partnership was one thing, but the way his heart had quickened when Beatrice smiled at him, the way he had felt when she said his name, that was something else entirely. He barely knew the woman. She had pointed a rifle at him 3 days ago. But there was something about her that drew him like a moth to flame. Miguel was waiting when Wade rode in, a knowing look on his face. "How did it go?" "We have a new business partner. I'm paying off the Lawson Ranch debt in exchange for 25% of profits for 3 years." Miguel whistled low. "That's generous. It's fair. The ranch is sound, she's capable, and it's the right thing to do." And what? "And what else, boss? Because I've known you for 10 years, and I've never seen you look at a woman the way you looked at Miss Lawson." Wade felt heat rise in his face. "I barely know her." "That's not a denial, Miguel, drop it." But Miguel grinned. "Can't drop the truth, boss. You're interested in her, and unless I miss my guess, she's interested in you too." Wade did not respond, but as he unsaddled his horse and went about the day's work, he could not stop thinking about Beatrice Lawson, about the determination in her eyes, about the way she had sat at his gate for 3 days straight, about the sound of his name on her lips. And he realized with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety that Miguel might be right. 3 days later, Wade rode back to the Lawson Ranch with legal documents drawn up by Fort Benton's only lawyer, a fastidious man named Horace Whitman, who had raised his eyebrows at the generous terms, but had done as instructed. Wade had also brought a bank draft for $1,500, enough to pay off the debt immediately and give Beatrice peace of mind. She met him at the door, looking much better after rest and proper meals. Her hair was pulled back in a neat braid, and she wore a simple green dress that brought out the color in her eyes. She smiled when she saw him, and Wade felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. "Wade, come in. I have coffee on." The inside of the house was clean and comfortable, with touches that spoke of a woman's hand. Curtains at the windows, flowers in a vase, books on a shelf. They sat at the kitchen table, and Beatrice poured coffee while Wade laid out the documents. Horace drew these up. "Everything is as we discussed. I pay the bank debt. You retain full ownership of the ranch, and I receive 25% of net profits for 3 years. After that, the partnership dissolves unless we both agree to extend it." Beatrice read through the papers carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. Wade watched her, admiring the way she took her time, clearly understanding what she was reading. Finally, she looked up. "This is more than fair, thank you. You're welcome. There's one more thing." He pulled out the bank draft. "This pays off your debt immediately. I stopped by the bank before coming here and told them to expect payment. You're free and clear as of today." Tears welled up in Beatrice's eyes again, and this time she did not try to hide them. "I do not know how to thank you. Build a successful ranch. Pay me back through hard work and good profits. That's thanks enough." Wade hesitated, then added, "And maybe we could have dinner sometime, in Fort Benton, at the hotel restaurant." Beatrice looked up sharply, surprise and something else flickering across her face. "Are you asking me to dinner as a business partner or as something else?" Wade felt his heart pounding. "As something else, if you are interested." She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face with those intelligent hazel eyes. "You're asking the sister of a man you killed to dinner, Wade. Some people in Fort Benton would find that scandalous." "You find it scandalous?" "No," she said softly. "I find it brave and honest, and yes, I'm interested." The relief that flooded through Wade was almost dizzying. "Saturday evening, I can pick you up at 6. I will be ready." They signed the partnership papers, and Wade found himself reluctant to leave. They talked for another hour about ranching, about Fort Benton, about nothing and everything. Beatrice was intelligent and funny, with a dry wit that caught him off guard and made him laugh. When he finally forced himself to stand and make his goodbyes, she walked him to the door. "Wade," she said as he was mounting his horse. "Thank you for everything. You did not have to help me, and you did anyway. That means more than I can say. You earned it, by being stubborn enough to sit at my gate for 3 days." She laughed, the sound like music. "Well, when you put it that way." Wade rode home with a lightness in his chest that had nothing to do with business partnerships and everything to do with hazel eyes and a brave smile. Saturday arrived with agonizing slowness. Wade found himself more nervous than he had been in years, changing his shirt 3 times before finally settling on a dark blue one that Miguel assured him looked fine. He shaved carefully, slicked his hair back, and tried to ignore the knowing grins of his ranch hands as he saddled his best horse. The ride to the Lawson Ranch seemed to take forever and no time at all. Beatrice was waiting on the porch when he arrived, wearing a dress he had not seen before, dark blue with white lace at the collar and cuffs. Her hair was styled in soft waves around her face, and she looked so beautiful that Wade momentarily forgot how to speak. "You look lovely," he finally managed. "Thank you. You look very handsome yourself." He helped her into the buckboard he had brought for the occasion, and they set off toward Fort Benton as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. The town was busy on a Saturday evening with people coming and going from the general store, the saloon, the church. Wade saw heads turn as they drove past, saw the whispers and curious looks. Beatrice noticed too. "I told you it would be scandalous," she said lightly, but he heard the tension underneath. "Let them talk. We know the truth." The hotel restaurant was the finest dining establishment in Fort Benton, with white tablecloths and real china. The maitre d' showed them to a table near the window, and Wade caught sight of Sheriff Henderson across the room, who raised his glass in a sardonic toast. Wade ignored him, focusing instead on Beatrice. They ordered dinner and talked as the evening deepened into night. Beatrice told him about growing up on the ranch, about her mother who had died when she was 12, about her dreams of building something lasting. Wade shared his own stories about coming west with nothing, about Samuel Cobb and the lessons he had learned, about building the Double Diamond into one of the most successful ranches in Montana. "You ever get lonely?" Beatrice asked at one point. "Living out there with just your ranch hands for company?" "Sometimes," Wade admitted. "I've been so focused on building the ranch that I never really thought about building a life beyond it. What about you?" "Very lonely. Especially after my father died." "Thomas was there, but he was pulling away, drinking more, gambling. I felt like I was losing him long before you shot him." She looked down at her plate. "Is that terrible to say?" "No, it's honest." Wade reached across the table and took her hand. "You've been through a lot, B. You're allowed to feel however you feel about it." She turned her hand over, her fingers intertwining with his. "Thank you for understanding." They stayed at the restaurant until it closed, talking and laughing, the time passing in a blur. When Wade finally drove Beatrice home under a sky full of stars, he felt like he had known her for years instead of days. At her door, he helped her down from the buckboard, his hands lingering on her waist. "I had a wonderful evening," she said softly. "So did I. Can we do it again?" "I would like that very much." Wade leaned down, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not pull away. Instead, she rose up on her toes to meet him, and when their lips touched, Wade felt the world tilt on its axis. The kiss was gentle and sweet, full of promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "Good night, B," Wade whispered. "Good night, Wade." He rode home through the darkness with his heart singing, already counting the hours until he could see her again. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Wade visited the Lawson Ranch regularly, ostensibly to check on his investment but really to see Beatrice. They would talk about ranch business, yes, but they would also talk about everything else. About books and music and dreams. About fears and hopes and the future. And with each conversation, with each shared laugh and meaningful look, Wade felt himself falling deeper in love. It was not just the physical attraction, though God knew she was beautiful. It was her mind, sharp and quick. Her wit, dry and unexpected. Her courage, unwavering in the face of adversity. Her kindness to her ranch hands, her gentleness with animals, her fierce determination to succeed on her own terms. Everything about her drew him in, made him want to be better, to be worthy of her. Beatrice seemed to feel the same pull. Wade would catch her watching him with an expression that made his heart race. She would find excuses to touch his hand, his arm, her fingers lingering just a moment longer than necessary. When they said goodbye, the kisses grew longer, more passionate, until Wade had to force himself to leave before he did something improper. Fall arrived in Montana with its usual swift brutality, the warm days giving way to crisp nights and the threat of early snow. Wade and Beatrice began moving their cattle to lower pastures, preparing for winter. They worked side by side often now, Wade's hands helping with the Lawson cattle alongside his own ranch work. One day in late October, as they were riding back from checking fence lines, Beatrice's horse spooked at a rattlesnake. The mare reared and Beatrice, caught off guard, fell hard. Wade was off his horse in an instant, his heart in his throat as he ran to her side. "B, are you hurt?" She sat up slowly, wincing. "I think I twisted my ankle, and my pride is definitely bruised." Wade helped her to her feet, but when she tried to put weight on her left ankle, she gasped in pain. Without thinking, he swept her up into his arms, carrying her to his horse. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and despite the circumstances, Wade was acutely aware of her body pressed against his, her breath warm against his neck. "I can ride," she protested. "Your ankle needs to be looked at. I'm taking you to Doc Patterson." "Wade, I am fine." "It is just a little twisted. Humor me." She sighed but did not argue further, resting her head against his shoulder as he mounted his horse with her in his arms. The ride to Fort Benton took 40 minutes, and Wade treasured every moment of it, the weight of her in his arms, the trust implied in her relaxed posture. Doc Patterson confirmed that the ankle was badly sprained but not broken. He wrapped it tightly and prescribed rest. "Stay off it for at least a week, Miss Lawson, I mean it. A week, Doc, I have a ranch to run." "Then let your hands run it, or let Mr. Donovan here help. But if you do not stay off that ankle, you'll do permanent damage." Beatrice looked mutinous, but Wade cut off her protest. "She'll rest." "I will make sure of it." "You will make sure of it," Beatrice said archly once they were outside the doctor's office. "Yes, because you are too stubborn to take care of yourself properly, and someone needs to do it for you." She stared at him for a long moment, then suddenly laughed. "You know, Thomas used to say the same thing, that I never knew when to stop, when to rest. Then maybe you should listen." Wade helped her into the buckboard. "I'm taking you home, and you're going to put your foot up and let Jacob and your hands handle things for a few days." "And what are you going to do?" "I'm going to make sure you actually rest instead of sneaking out to work the minute my back is turned." As it turned out, Wade was right to be suspicious. The next morning, he rode over to the Lawson Ranch to find Beatrice hobbling around the barn on her injured ankle, trying to help with the horses. Wade dismounted and marched over to her with exasperation. "What did Doc Patterson say?" "He said to rest," she muttered. "And what are you doing?" "Not resting." Wade swept her up into his arms again, ignoring her squeal of protest, and carried her back to the house. "Jacob," he called. The young foreman came running. "Boss, what happened?" "Your boss is impossible, that's what happened. She's supposed to be resting, and I found her working in the barn." Jacob grinned. "Sounds like boss. I need you to keep an eye on her. Make sure she stays in the house with her foot up. If she tries to sneak out again, come get me at the Double Diamond." "You cannot just order people to imprison me in my own house," Beatrice protested. "Watch me." Wade carried her inside and set her down on the sofa, propping her injured foot up on a cushion. "You are going to rest if I have to sit here and make sure of it personally. Do you not have your own ranch to run? Miguel can handle things for a day." Wade pulled up a chair and sat down, crossing his arms. "I am not leaving until I am convinced you will behave." Beatrice glared at him, but there was a softness underneath the irritation. "You are incredibly bossy." "I'm practical, and someone needs to take care of you. I can take care of myself." "I know you can, but you do not have to, not anymore." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Beatrice's expression softened, and she reached out to take his hand. "Wade, why are you doing this?" "All of this. The money, the partnership, the helping, the caring." Wade looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. "Because somewhere between you blocking my gate and now, I fell in love with you." He heard her sharp intake of breath, saw her eyes widen. "You love me." "Yes." "I know it is fast. I know it is probably crazy, but I love you, B. I love your strength and your stubbornness and your courage. I love how you fight for what matters. I love talking to you, working with you, being near you. I love everything about you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too. I have been trying not to, telling myself it was too soon, that it was complicated because of Thomas. But I love you, Wade, so much it scares me." Wade moved from the chair to the sofa, gathering her carefully into his arms, mindful of her injured ankle. "Do not be scared. We will figure it out together." She kissed him then, deep and passionate, pouring all her feelings into it. Wade kissed her back with equal fervor, his hands tangling in her hair, his heart pounding. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. "Stay with me today," Beatrice whispered. "Just be here. Talk to me. I do not want to be alone." "I will stay as long as you want me to." They spent the day together on the sofa, talking and laughing and stealing kisses. Wade read to her from a book of poetry she loved. She told him stories about her childhood, making him laugh with tales of misadventures. As the sun set, he made dinner for them both, simple fare but prepared with care. And when it was time for him to leave, Beatrice held him close and whispered, "I do not want you to go. I will come back tomorrow, and every day after that. Promise. Promise." True to his word, Wade came every day while Beatrice's ankle healed. Sometimes he brought work with him, going over accounts or mending tack while she rested. Sometimes they just talked, their conversations ranging from the practical to the philosophical. And always, there was the undercurrent of love growing stronger with each passing day. By the time Beatrice's ankle had healed and winter had arrived in earnest, they were inseparable. Wade split his time between the Double Diamond and the Lawson Ranch, helping Beatrice with the harder work, making sure she and her hands had what they needed to survive the Montana winter. One evening in early December, as snow fell softly outside and they sat by the fire in Beatrice's living room, Wade pulled a small box from his pocket. Beatrice's eyes went wide when she saw it. "B," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know we have not known each other long. 6 months ago, you blocked my gate with a buckboard and pointed a rifle at me. But in that time, you have become the most important person in my world. I cannot imagine my life without you in it. I do not want to imagine it, so I am asking you here and now, will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond, the best he could afford while still maintaining the ranches. Beatrice stared at it, then at him, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Wade, I will marry you." Wade slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and passion he felt. When they finally broke apart, Beatrice was laughing and crying at the same time. "I cannot believe this is happening. 6 months ago, I thought I had lost everything. And now I have you. We have each other," Wade corrected, "and we will build a life together, not just the ranches, but a real life, a family. I want that so much." They were married on Christmas Eve in the little church in Fort Benton, with Miguel standing up as Wade's best man and Jacob giving Beatrice away. The church was packed with ranchers and townspeople, all curious about the unusual couple whose love story had become the talk of the territory. Sheriff Henderson sat in the front row, shaking his head in amused disbelief. Beatrice wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her taller frame, and she looked so beautiful that Wade felt his throat tighten with emotion when she walked down the aisle. The ceremony was simple and sweet, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Wade kissed his bride with a joy that radiated from every pore. The reception was held at the hotel, with music and dancing and food. Wade danced with his wife, holding her close, marveling at how his life had changed. Miguel clapped him on the shoulder at one point, grinning widely. "Told you not to be an idiot about it. I am glad you listened." "So am I," Wade said, his eyes on Beatrice as she laughed at something Jacob had said. That night, Wade brought his bride home to the Double Diamond. They had decided to live there, as it was the larger ranch, though they would maintain the Lawson property and run it as part of their combined operation. In the bedroom Wade had spent so many years sleeping alone, he made love to his wife for the first time, tender and passionate and full of wonder. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the firelight, Beatrice traced patterns on his chest. "I keep thinking about that first day when I blocked your gate. Best thing you ever did. Was it? It was reckless and stupid. It was brave. It got my attention, and it brought you into my life." Wade kissed her forehead. "I would not change a single thing. Not even the 3 days of sitting in the sun, not even that, though I did worry about you." She smiled against his skin. "I knew you were watching me. At night I could feel you looking out from the porch. It made me feel less alone. You will never be alone again, Bea. I promise you that." The winter passed in a haze of happiness. Wade and Beatrice settled into married life with surprising ease, their personalities complementing each other well. She was organized and detail-oriented where he was big-picture focused. He was patient where she was impulsive. Together, they made a formidable team. They combined the ranch's operations, streamlining the work and improving efficiency. The hands from both properties learned to work together, with Jacob becoming Wade's right-hand man alongside Miguel. By spring, when calving season arrived, they were ready. It was a good season. The winter had been mild enough that they had not lost many cattle, and the calves came healthy and strong. Beatrice worked alongside Wade and the hands, her knowledge and instincts proving invaluable. When it came time to drive the cattle to market in late summer, they had over 300 head to sell. The prices were good, better than expected. When Wade did the accounting, he realized they had made a substantial profit. He showed the figures to Beatrice one evening, spreading the ledgers out on the kitchen table. "This is incredible," she breathed, running her finger down the columns. "After paying expenses and setting aside operating capital, we have cleared over $8,000. Your 25% of that is $2,000, more than enough to pay off what I gave you for the bank debt, with plenty left over." Beatrice looked up at him, her eyes serious. "Wade, we are married now. This partnership arrangement does not make sense anymore. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. Are you saying you want to dissolve the partnership? I'm saying we should own everything together, 50-50, equal partners in everything." Wade felt warmth spread through his chest. "Are you sure? The double diamond is worth more than the Lawson Ranch." "I do not care about that. We are building a life together, not maintaining separate businesses. I want us to be true partners." Wade pulled her into his arms. "Then that is what we will be. I will have Horace draw up new papers making everything joint ownership." "Thank you," she whispered against his neck, "for treating me as an equal. You are my equal, Bea, in every way that matters." That fall, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant. Wade found her sitting on the porch steps one morning, staring out at the land with a strange expression on her face. He sat down beside her, concerned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. I am pregnant." Wade felt the words hit him like a physical blow. "Pregnant?" "Yes. Doc Patterson confirmed it yesterday when I went to town." She turned to look at him, uncertainty in her eyes. "Are you happy?" "Happy," Wade laughed, the sound almost giddy. "Bea, I am thrilled, terrified but thrilled." He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "We are going to have a baby." "We are going to have a baby," she repeated, and then she was laughing too, both of them giddy with joy and fear and anticipation. The pregnancy was not easy. Beatrice was sick for months, unable to keep much food down, exhausted all the time. Wade hovered over her anxiously, driving her crazy with his concern but also making her feel cherished and loved. When her belly began to swell with their child, he would rest his hand on it, marveling at the life they had created together. "I hope he has your eyes," Beatrice said one night as they lay in bed, Wade's hand on her stomach. "I hope she has your courage," Wade countered. "Why do you think it is a girl, just a feeling? Though honestly, I do not care as long as you both come through this healthy." Beatrice turned in his arms to look at him. "I am scared, Wade. What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong. Doc Patterson is the best and you are strong and healthy. We are going to be fine. Promise, promise." The baby came in early May of 1885, after a long and difficult labor that left Wade pacing the floor anxiously while Doc Patterson and a midwife attended to Beatrice. Her screams tore at him, making him feel helpless and desperate. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he heard a different sound, the thin, angry wail of a newborn. Doc Patterson emerged from the bedroom, his face tired but smiling. "Congratulations, Wade, you have a son." "A son," Wade repeated, stunned. "And B, tired but fine. She wants to see you." Wade hurried into the bedroom to find Beatrice propped up against pillows, pale and exhausted but radiantly happy, holding a tiny bundle in her arms. When she saw him, she smiled. "Come meet your son." Wade approached almost reverently, looking down at the tiny red face peeking out from the blanket. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was waving tiny fists angrily at the world. Wade felt his heart crack open with love so intense it was almost painful. "He's perfect," he whispered. "You're perfect. I love you both so much." "I love you too." Beatrice shifted the baby slightly. "Do you want to hold him?" Wade took his son carefully, cradling the tiny body against his chest. The baby quieted, looking up at him with unfocused eyes, and Wade felt tears stream down his face. "Hello, little one. I'm your father, and I promise I am going to do my best by you." They named him William Thomas Donovan, William for Wade's father and Thomas for Beatrice's brother. It was Beatrice's idea to include Thomas's name, a way of honoring her brother's memory while acknowledging the complicated circumstances that had brought her and Wade together. "He made mistakes," Beatrice said, when Wade questioned whether it was appropriate. "But he was my brother, and I loved him. Our son should carry his name." Wade kissed her forehead. "Then that is what we will do." Little William, or Will as they took to calling him, was a healthy, happy baby who seemed to take after both his parents in equal measure. He had Wade's dark hair and Beatrice's hazel eyes, and from the beginning, he showed signs of the determination and stubbornness that had brought his parents together. As Will grew from baby to toddler, Wade and Beatrice's ranching operation continued to thrive. They had several good years in a row, allowing them to expand their holdings and improve their stock. They built a new barn, upgraded the main house, and hired more hands to help with the increasing work. Fort Benton grew too, the railroad bringing more settlers and opportunities. What had once been a rough frontier town was becoming civilized, with schools and shops and even a small opera house. Wade and Beatrice became respected members of the community, known for their fair dealing and hard work. When Will was 3, Beatrice became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1888 she gave birth to twin girls. They named them Sarah Catherine and Emma Jane, and Wade found himself completely overwhelmed by the reality of being father to 3 children under the age of 4. How do people do this? He asked Beatrice one sleepless night as he walked the floor with a crying Sarah while Emma nursed and Will slept restlessly in his room. Beatrice laughed, tired but content. "One day at a time, my love. One day at a time." The years flowed past in a blur of ranch work and child rearing, of good seasons and hard winters, of joy and occasional sorrow. They lost Miguel to old age when Will was 7, and Wade grieved the loss of his oldest friend deeply. But Jacob stepped up to take over as foreman, proving himself more than capable. Will grew into a serious, responsible boy who loved the ranch and everything about it. He was happiest when out riding with his father, learning the work, asking endless questions. Sarah was the wild one, always climbing things she should not and getting into mischief. Emma was the quiet, thoughtful child, content to sit with her mother and learn about running the household and keeping the accounts. When Will was 12, he asked Wade about Thomas Lawson. They were riding fence line together, just the two of them, when the boy spoke up. "Pa, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "You killed Uncle Thomas, did you not, before you met Ma?" Wade felt his stomach clench. They had known this conversation would come eventually, but that did not make it easier. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "He was trying to steal cattle from our ranch. When we confronted him, he drew his gun. I drew faster. It was self-defense, but that does not mean I felt good about it." Will was quiet for a long moment. "Ma says Uncle Thomas made mistakes, but that he loved her and was trying to save their ranch." "That's true. He was desperate and made poor choices, but he was your mother's brother and she loved him. You feel bad about it." Wade stopped his horse, turning to look at his son. "Every day, Will. Taking a life, even in self-defense, is something that stays with you. But if I had not defended myself and our ranch, I would not be here. I would not have met your mother. You and your sisters would not exist." "So it is complicated." Will nodded slowly, processing this. "I'm glad you're here, Pa. I am glad you met Ma." "So am I, son, so am I." They continued their ride in companionable silence, and Wade felt grateful for his son's understanding and maturity. When they returned home, Beatrice was waiting on the porch, and from the look in her eyes, Wade knew Will had told her about their conversation. "Thank you," she said quietly that night as they prepared for bed. "For being honest with him, for not hiding from the hard truths. He deserved the truth, and he is old enough to understand complexity." Beatrice kissed him softly. "You are a good father, Wade Donovan, and a good man. I try to be. You make it easier." More years passed, bringing both challenges and triumphs. There were droughts and storms, sickness and accidents, but through it all, Wade and Beatrice faced everything together. Their partnership, forged in the unusual circumstances of a blocked gate and a 3-day wait, had proven unshakable. Will grew into a capable young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch. At 18, he announced his intention to start his own small spread on a piece of property Wade had acquired years earlier. Wade and Beatrice helped him get started, proud of his independence and ambition. Sarah, true to her wild nature, shocked everyone by announcing at 17 that she wanted to be a doctor. It was an unusual ambition for a woman in 1898, but Beatrice supported her daughter fiercely, remembering her own struggles to be taken seriously in a man's world. They sent Sarah east to medical school, and she wrote home regularly about her studies and adventures. Emma stayed close to home, marrying a local rancher's son and settling on a neighboring property. She gave Wade and Beatrice their first grandchild, a boy they named Wade Thomas in honor of both his grandfathers. On a warm summer evening in 1900, Wade and Beatrice sat on their porch watching the sun set over the land they had built together. They were both in their 50s now, their hair touched with gray, their faces lined with years of sun and wind and laughter. But when Wade looked at his wife, he still saw the fierce young woman who had blocked his gate 17 years earlier. "You ever think about that day?" he asked. "When you showed up with the buckboard," Beatrice smiled, reaching over to take his hand. "All the time. It was the craziest thing I ever did. It was the bravest thing you ever did. I was so desperate, so scared. I had lost everything, and I did not know what else to do." You fought for what mattered. That took courage. You could have had me arrested. You could have refused to help, but you did not." Wade squeezed her hand. "Because you reminded me of myself. Because I saw in you something worth believing in. And because even then, I think some part of me recognized that you were going to be important to me." "I fell in love with you during those 3 days," Beatrice admitted. "Sitting at that gate, watching you watch me, I kept thinking about how patient you were. How you could have forced the issue but chose to wait. It showed me the kind of man you were. I fell in love with you too, with your determination and your courage, with the way you refused to give up." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. Finally, Beatrice spoke again. "You have any regrets, Wade?" "Only that I did not meet you sooner. Otherwise, no, this life we have built together, it is everything I could have wanted. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, they made us stronger." Beatrice leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Wade Donovan. Thank you for giving a desperate woman with a buckboard a chance. I love you too, B. Thank you for being stubborn enough to wait 3 days." They laughed together, the sound carrying across the ranch yard where their hands were finishing the day's work, where their legacy stretched out in land and cattle and family. The Double Diamond and the Lawson Ranch, combined into one successful operation. 3 children, grown and making their own ways. Grandchildren to carry on the family name. Over the following years, Wade and Beatrice eased back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, letting Will take over more of the management. They spent their time enjoying their grandchildren, traveling occasionally and simply being together. Their love, tested by time and circumstance, had only grown stronger. Sarah graduated from medical school and returned to Montana, opening a practice in Fort Benton. She was the first female doctor in the territory, and Beatrice burst with pride every time someone mentioned it. Emma had 3 more children, filling her house with noise and laughter. Will married a rancher's daughter and continued to expand his operation, proving himself as capable as his father. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Wade and Beatrice threw a large party at the ranch, inviting everyone who had been part of their journey. The house and yard were full of people eating and drinking and celebrating. Sheriff Henderson, ancient and retired now, made a toast. 25 years ago, I rode out to Wade's gate to deal with a young woman who was causing a disturbance. I thought she was crazy. Turns out she was the sanest person there. She knew what she wanted and she was willing to fight for it. And Wade here was smart enough to recognize a treasure when he saw one. Here is to 25 more years. The crowd cheered, and Wade pulled Beatrice into his arms, kissing her as their children and grandchildren and friends applauded. When they broke apart, Beatrice was crying happy tears. 25 years, she marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes it feels like forever. Both, Wade agreed, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. As the years continued to roll by, Wade and Beatrice grew old together with grace and love. They watched their grandchildren grow up, welcomed great-grandchildren. They saw the West change from wild frontier to settled civilization, from horse and wagon to automobiles and telephones. But through all the changes, their love remained constant. Wade Donovan died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Beatrice holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you," and Beatrice whispered them back through her tears. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the land he had loved so much. Beatrice lived another 5 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, sharing stories of Wade and their life together. She told anyone who would listen about the day she blocked his gate with a buckboard, about how he had sat down and waited 3 days to talk, about how that patience and respect had been the foundation of everything that followed. When Beatrice passed at the age of 83, they buried her next to Wade on that same hill. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, her children had inscribed a simple phrase: "She fought for what she loved." Years later, when the great-grandchildren asked about Wade and Beatrice, about how they had met and fallen in love, the family would tell the story of the buckboard at the gate, about a desperate young woman who refused to give up, about a patient man who chose understanding over anger, about 3 days that changed 2 lives and created a legacy that would endure for generations. The Double Diamond Ranch still operates today, run by descendants of Wade and Beatrice Donovan. The original ranch house has been expanded and modernized, but the porch where they spent so many evenings together remains, a testament to simpler times. And on that hill where they are buried, visitors can still see the view that Wade loved, the land that Beatrice fought so hard to keep, the legacy they built together from courage and patience and love. The buckboard, remarkably, still exists. It sits in a place of honor in the ranch's equipment barn, carefully preserved by generations of Donovans as a reminder of where it all started. Local historians come to see it sometimes, this ordinary wagon that played such an extraordinary role in one family's history. The story of Wade and Beatrice Donovan became part of Montana legend, told and retold in Fort Benton and throughout the territory. Some embellished it, adding dramatic flourishes that never happened. But the core truth remained unchanged. A woman desperate to save her home blocked a man's gate, and instead of reacting with anger, he responded with patience. That patience led to understanding. Understanding led to partnership. Partnership led to love. And love led to a lifetime of happiness. Their great-great-granddaughter, Catherine, a historian specializing in Western American history, wrote a book about Wade and Beatrice in the early 21st century. In her research, she uncovered letters between them, old photographs, journal entries from Beatrice, and account books showing the growth of their combined ranching empire. What struck her most was the deep respect and affection evident in everything they left behind. In one letter, written by Wade to Beatrice during a cattle drive when they had been married 15 years, he wrote, "Every day I thank God for the stubbornness that brought you to my gate. You changed my life in the best possible way. I was building a ranch. You taught me to build a life. I love you beyond words." In Beatrice's journal, written shortly before her death, she recorded, "I am an old woman now, but I remember that young girl who blocked Wade's gate as if it were yesterday. I was so scared, so desperate, so determined. I did not know what would happen. I only knew I had to try. Wade gave me a chance when no one else would. He saw me as an equal when the world saw me as less. He loved me with a patience and kindness that never wavered. If I could go back and change anything, I would not. Every joy, every sorrow, every moment was worth it because I shared it with him." These documents, carefully preserved by the family, paint a picture of a love story that transcended its unusual beginning. It was not a fairy tale. There were arguments and disagreements, hard times and heartaches. But beneath it all was a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection that carried them through everything life threw at them. The Fort Benton Historical Society maintains an exhibit about the Donovans, with photographs and artifacts from their lives. School children visit regularly, learning about Montana history through the lens of this one remarkable couple. The exhibit includes a large photograph of Wade and Beatrice taken on their 50th wedding anniversary. Both of them, white-haired and wrinkled but with love shining clearly in their eyes as they looked at each other. In the end, the the story of Wade and Beatrice Donovan is not just about a blocked gate or a 3-day wait. It is about courage in the face of desperation, about patience in the face of provocation, about seeing past anger and blame to the possibility of something better, about two people who could have been enemies becoming instead the greatest love story their town had ever known. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren carry on their legacy, not just in the successful ranch operation but in the values Wade and Beatrice exemplified. Hard work, fair dealing, courage to fight for what matters, patience to hear all sides, love that endures beyond easy circumstances into the realm of true partnership. The land they loved spreads out under the Montana sky, still wild in places, still beautiful, still home to cattle and horses and the people who tend them. The Missouri River still flows past Fort Benton, bringing life to the high plains. And on that hill overlooking it all, Wade and Beatrice rest together, their story complete, their love eternal. It began with a buckboard blocking a gate. It continued with a man who chose to wait rather than force. It flourished into a love that transformed two lonely people into a family, a struggling ranch into a legacy, and a moment of desperation into a lifetime of joy. And though Wade and Beatrice have long since passed from this world, their story lives on, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected beginnings. The Double Diamond Ranch stands as testament to what they built together, not just in land and cattle but in family and love and legacy. Every calf born, every fence mended, every sunset watched from that old porch is part of their continuing story. And every time a descendant faces a difficult decision, they think of Wade's patience and Beatrice's courage, drawing strength from the example set so many years ago. In the modern ranch house, now occupied by Will's grandson and his family, there hangs a large painting of the original ranch as it looked in Wade and Beatrice's time. The artist, working from old photographs and family descriptions, captured it perfectly. The main house with its wide porch, the barns and corrals, the endless Montana sky, and in the foreground, a buckboard wagon sitting by a gate, a tribute to the beginning of it all. Visitors to the ranch often ask about the painting, and the current generation of Donovans never tires of telling the story. How their great-great-great-grandmother blocked their great-great-great-grandfather's gate. How he waited 3 days. How that patience and her courage became the foundation for everything that followed. The story has been adapted into local theater productions, featured in Western history documentaries, and taught in schools across Montana as an example of frontier resilience and determination. But for the Donovan family, it is simply the story of how their family began, told and retold at holiday gatherings and family reunions, a reminder of where they came from and what they stand for. On summer evenings, when the current generation sits on that same porch where Wade and Beatrice spent so many hours together, they sometimes imagine they can feel the presence of their ancestors. The love that was forged there, tested and proven through decades of partnership. The decisions that were made there, shaping not just one ranch but an entire family's destiny. The quiet moments of connection between two people who chose each other every day for more than half a century. The gate where Beatrice parked her buckboard has been replaced many times over the years, but it still stands in the same location. Someone, generations back, had the foresight to mount a small bronze plaque there, reading simply, "Here it began, 1883. Newlywed Donovans make a tradition of taking their wedding photos by that gate, honoring the spot where Wade and Beatrice's love story started. And so the legacy continues, generation after generation, each adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation laid by Wade and Beatrice. The Double Diamond Ranch thrives, a living monument to the love and partnership that made it possible. The family grows, spreading across Montana and beyond, but always keeping ties to that original ranch, that original story, that original love in the end. Wade and Beatrice Donovan gave their descendants more than land and wealth. They gave them an example of what love should be: patient, respectful, equal, enduring. They showed that the best partnerships are built on mutual understanding and support. They proved that love can bloom in the most unexpected circumstances and flourish into something that touches lives far beyond their own. Their story, beginning with a blocked gate and a 3-day wait, ending with a lifetime of shared joy and sorrow, remains a beacon of hope and inspiration. It reminds us that sometimes the most foolish-seeming actions lead to the greatest rewards, that patience and understanding triumph over anger and force. That love, true love, is worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth everything. Wade and Beatrice Donovan lived, loved, struggled, triumphed, and eventually passed from this world. But their love story lives on, forever connected to the Montana land they cherished, the family they created, and the legacy they left behind. A legacy that began with a simple, desperate act. She blocked his gate with a buckboard, and the cowboy sat down and waited 3 days to talk. And in that waiting, in that conversation that finally happened, 2 lives were forever changed, and a love story for the ages was born.